Number two was I don't know where our slide went. Uh, is proper mode, and that mode is immersion. So I joke, we believe in getting mud in their hair. We put them all the way under, and I like to get them all the way under. I try and push them down deep enough, and elbows not sticking up, I want to get them under, and it's because this is what pictures burial. Burial is under the ground. They didn't sprinkle dirt. They entombed them. They put them under. This is what it pictures. It's pictured as burial. And remember, when John the Baptist shows up baptizing in the Jordan, this was not an unusual thing. There was a lot of baptism going on. So if you go to Israel today, you go to the south wall of the Temple Mount, you're going to find there the excavation of dozens of mikvah. Mikvaot is the plural. We call them baptistries. And there's a video they show when you go to the western wall, and you go in the little museum they've got there. It's a Jewish museum run by the Israeli government, and they show you a guy who comes as a pilgrim, and he's been walking all the way, say, from up north. He comes down that central mountain ridge, crosses the brook Kidron, comes up that ridge called the City of David, passes the Pool of Siloam, on up the stairs there. He gets to the south wall, takes off his dirty clothes, immerses himself in the mikvah there. As he comes up out of the water, puts on a fresh new white robe, and then proceeds on into the temple. And everybody who came to the temple went through that. You had to wash yourself, cleanse yourself, and then walk into the temple. You had through what were called the Huldah gates. You went in one way and you came out the other. The only exception to that was if you were in mourning. If you're in mourning, you go in the exit and out the entrance so that you could be comforted by others who would see that you're going the wrong way, and they would comfort you and speak scripture to you. So all Jews knew baptism. You go to Qumran, there at the southern tip of the Dead Sea. You know how much rainfall they get in Qumran every year? About 2 inches. You know how deep the mikvah are at Qumran? 6 feet. Now, think how much water it takes to have 6 foot deep mikvaot at Qumran. A lot of water, and water's precious. So my point is, if sprinkling were in any way acceptable, they'd have done it. It would have been easier. The Ethiopian eunuch, you think he's got a canteen of water up in the chariot with him? He does. There's no question about it. But he says, here's water. What hinders me to be baptized? And they get down out of the chariot and get into the water for Philip to baptize him. My point is, I'm trying to be charitable here, but I don't even think it's intellectually credible to suggest that what they did in the New Testament was anything other than immersion. It's what baptizo means. My training in Greek is in classical Greek, not Koine. I did my Greek work at the University of Kentucky. And I asked one of my professors one day, can baptizo mean anything other than immerse? And she said, the only use in classical Greek of that for any other thing other than immerse was it was used of it when a ship was in dry dock and they would launch it into the water. So it can also mean plunge. So it's plunge, dip, or immerse. So you would plunge a ship into the water, and they'd use baptizo for that. But every other use of the word means completely immerse. You dip it under the water, and that's just simply what baptizo means. If you're going to make a case for sprinkling, I think you've got to make, the only way you can really make it is that it's symbolic and therefore it doesn't matter. So, which I disagree with that too, but I think it's an honest argument. Whereas to me, trying to make the New Testament say anything other than immersion it's not archaeologically feasible. It's not etymologically feasible. Baptizo means immerse. The mikvah in Israel show that they immersed. And so when they come out to John to be baptized in the Jordan, again, he could have done it. He could have been pouring out in the desert. But they come into the Jordan to be baptized of John. And so it is immersion, pure and simple. It's the only thing that pictures burial. We are dead to the old way of life. We're buried, and we're risen to walk in newness of life. And so Baptists have insisted immersion is the mode. So if someone wants to join Buck Run and they were sprinkled in a Methodist church, we're going to reject their baptism on at least one grounds, actually more than that, but number two gets it right off. So any question about immersion? Anybody want to ask anything about that? All right, number three, yeah. Okay, great question. He's asking, let me read into your question. I think I know what you're saying. Let's say somebody trusts the Lord in their hospital room, basically on their deathbed, days to live. They've trusted Christ. They'd like to be obedient to the Lord before they die. Would I do something else? Since we can't get them into the church to baptize them, and there's no, let's say it's physically impossible to immerse them. Would I do something else? Like, would I anoint their head with water and say, like, since you can't be baptized, we're doing this instead? My short, simple answer is no, I would not. I wouldn't do it. I just don't see the purpose of it. Baptism is a church ordinance. I think it is a doorway into the church, as it were. It's prerequisite to the privileges of church membership. It doesn't complete their salvation. It's purely symbolic. And if a person is unable to be obedient in baptism, I think there's really no command to be baptized. It's not like that person's going to heaven disobedient. They can't obey Christ's general command to be baptized. But I'm not going to do something else and pretend it's baptism. To me, that seems, it just opens a door I don't want to open. So the thief on the cross wasn't baptized. I don't think he was disobedient. I don't think he was a second-class citizen in heaven. He couldn't be baptized. And, okay, I think God understands these exigencies that makes it impossible for a person to do it. But I think you're going to give permission to people to, I think that's going to end up going further than you want it to go if you do it. So I've just told people, the Lord understands. I'm so grateful that you want to be obedient. But the Lord understands this. He's the one who saved you, and he saved you here. So you don't need to worry about that. He understands. But see, they're never going to get to exercise the privileges of church membership, because they're not going to participate in the life of the church. They're going to vote on the budget. So I don't see any point to doing it. And I think it might give permission to others to seek really an alternate form of obedience when they could be obedient. So I won't do it. Go ahead. Well, Yeah, if I had, I'm going to, in a little bit, I'm going to tell you a story and about me baptizing a, a handicapped person, and it didn't go well. Uh, but it was my very first baptism too. It was my first. So yeah, but you know, we try and make allowance. If there's a way to be, to like if we had to go to a larger body of water to get them in it, like with a wheelchair or something, we do that. Our other building was at the creek, and for well over 100 years, Buck Run baptized in the creek, and I baptized Tanya in the creek, which I need to come back and sort of tell you that's that story. But so yeah, I've baptized handicapped people, and you just sometimes you have to use other people to help you do it. But I would do it if it's possible for them to be obedient. I want to help them be obedient, and it's not about elegance; it's about death. And so we can do it. We'll do it. You had a question? Uh, all right. So if a person cannot be baptized, then I don't think they have the privileges of membership. That's my personal view. Yeah, yeah. Let me back up. We're talking about the proper candidate. One of the things I sort of failed to mention, but we all are going to deal with, if you pastor very long at all, you're going to have someone say, I don't think I was saved when I was baptized. It happens a lot, happens all the time. Happens to people who made childhood professions. It happens to people who made adult confessions. It often happens to people who fall into sin and they conclude, well, I wasn't really saved. When someone says that, here's what I advise you to do and to say. I never, ever say to somebody, well, just to be sure, why don't you be baptized again? I'll never say that because I don't want to cheapen or lighten the significance of baptism either way. So if they've been scripturally baptized, I don't want to ask them to do it again. I don't want them to think there's any significance in doing it again. If I baptize them again, if their baptism was proper, then that's all they need, and to do more than that, I think, is to not be obedient, because it's like Moses hitting the rock twice. You're breaking God's picture. If you were scripturally baptized to begin with, you shouldn't be baptized again. So I never say to anybody, just to be sure, let's baptize you again. The difficult, but if somebody says, I've concluded I wasn't saved when I was baptized, then you weren't really baptized. You just got wet, and you need to be baptized. The difficulty comes when people struggle with it. And here's Tanya's story. Tanya, my wife, was a member at Ashland Avenue. She grew up there at Ashland Avenue. That's where I met her. And she had been saved, or she made a profession and had been baptized probably at 12, around there. She probably until I came into her life, she never really had a hunger for the things of the Lord. Early on, our courtship and first year of marriage, she showed interest in things, but it was clearly, she loved me. She wanted to be interested in what I was interested in. Our first year of marriage, we're down at Mountain View Baptist Camp in Wayne County, Kentucky. And that night, we had services, and it was one of those times when God just comes down. We had a sort of a spontaneous service that night out under the stars, young people. A lot of kids got saved that night, and it wasn't one of those emotional things that can't. It was truly God coming down. I mean, I can look now this many years later, and it's amazing how many of the kids that were saved that week at that camp are now in ministry or deacons in churches, and some on the mission field, and God really did a great thing. Well, that very night, Tanya, she had an emotional experience, and it hit her for the first time. She said, "You're telling me God loves me no matter what I do?" Yeah. And he doesn't love me anymore if I do good things? No. And he doesn't love me any less when I mess up? No. And this just overwhelmed her. And it's like, I've been preaching this the whole year we've been married. This is what I say to our youth every week, and you're just now getting that. Something happened that night. We didn't know if this was she saved that night? Or was this just an awakening, a greater understanding of the gospel? And I just was determined not to push her either way. I was like, this is between you and the Lord. I can't tell you what to do. And she struggled with that for years. We would talk about it. I just don't know if I was saved as a child. And I said, well, you need to figure it out, because if you weren't, you need to be baptized. If you were, you need to rest in that and know that you've been obedient. But I can't tell you what you need to do. And it was, I'm going to say now, probably 6 years ago, it's about that. On a Wednesday morning, I think I'd already been to the church. I came home, and she said, I am settled in my mind that I was not saved as a child, and I need to be baptized. I think I'm fairly certain I was saved 1981, that first year we were married, and I need to be baptized. I said, well, we'll do it Sunday. And she said, no, I need to do it today. She said, I've been disobedient long enough. I want to be baptized today. This is a Wednesday. I said, well, okay, we'll baptize you tonight at prayer meeting. So we just put up on Facebook, come tonight, pastor's wife's going to be baptized. And something was wrong. Our baptistry was broken. And so I took her, we had, 200 and something people showed up that night, gathered on the creek bank. And I took Tanya out into the Elkhorn Creek and baptized her there, where hundreds of saints for over 100 years had been baptized at Buck Run. And it was really, really special. Just to literally stand in the stream of God's grace that has flowed through Buck Run since 1818. It was a joy. And she settled that in her mind. Now, we had a lot of people ask, weren't you worried about what people would say? And I can honestly tell you that we never even discussed what will people think about this, because that's irrelevant. First of all, I don't know why anybody would think negatively about that. She's been obedient. She's settled in her mind. She was not saved then. She was saved in 1981. She needs to be baptized. And by the way, that same day, there was another young lady in our church, a very faithful young lady, but she said, I too know I was not saved when I was baptized. So you're going to have that happen. My advice to you is, do not try and push them. They need to be settled in their mind. But I do teach it, and the way we phrase it is, your baptism needs to be in the right order. So if you were baptized before you were genuinely regenerated, you really weren't baptized. You just got wet. Because baptism, by its definition, has to have a proper candidate, and that's a saved person. Has to have a proper mode, and that's immersion.